تسعى ممثلة في صندوق تطوير العشوائيات للقضاء على المناطق العشوائية وغير الآمنة في محافظات الجمهورية واستبدالها بمشروعات سكنية عدة داخل كثير من المناطق لتوفير حياة آدمية هادئة الذين عانوا من سنوات طويلة من الإهمال، وهم سكان هذه المناطق العشوائية لم يكونوا أبدا يتوقعوا أنهم على موعد مع هذا المشروع الكبير وهذه الأماكن المميزة التي تحترم الآدمية وتقدم كل الخدمات على أعلى مستوى من الكفاءة. مشاهدينا الكرام، حينما كانت القاهرة مزدحمة ومليئة بالكثير من السكان كان بها العديد من المشكلات، لكن الدولة المصرية والقيادة السياسية أولت اهتمام كبيرا لعودة العاصمة القديمة
housing projects in the 6th of October city. Also, Sisi is about to inaugurate a number of bridges and accesses on Fayoum Wahat Road. The inauguration of housing projects today is a part of the efforts that are exerted by the state under the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in order to solve the problem of slums and unsafe areas inhabited by poor people, in order to transfer these citizens to an integrated and suitable civilized place to live in.
الذي يتمتع بكافة الخدمات والبنية الأساسية من مياه وكهرباء وغيرها، لكنه يعد واحد من أشكال الانتقال إلى شكل من أشكال الحياة الجديدة بيرتفع معها كل المستويات، المستوى التعليمي، المستوى الصحي، المستوى الأخلاقي. فتحرص الدولة من خلال هذه المشروعات على أن تؤسس بشكل أساسي لحياة لهؤلاء المواطنين على أعلى درجة من الكفاءة. من حيث
The past few years have witnessed a number of housing projects that were implemented by the state under the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and President Sisi were always keen on inaugurating new housing projects in order to transfer inhabitants living in slum areas and unsafe areas to suitable civilized places to live in.
وحدات السكنية إلى وحدات تجارية، وهو ما يلجأ إليه البعض بسلوك فردي وغير منضبط. من هنا تتخذ الدولة إجراءات حاسمة جدا تجاه كل من يحاول تشويه هذه الصورة المميزة والتي تتميز بها مصر، ليس على المستوى المحلي والإقليمي فحسب، ولكنه أيضا على المستوى الدولي. فلا توجد دولة في العالم استطاعت في هذا التوقيت وبهذه الدرجة من الكفاءة باشتراك عدد كبير جدا من الشركات الخاصة بالبناء في بالانتهاء من هذه الصورة.
To end just an image, as you can see in the background, we are in the sites of the projects for the people to be moved from an unprotected area and slums that do not have any respectful life to a principal one. The Egyptian state is seeking and pursue for a decent life for all Egyptians.
حياتك، خلي لبلدك أكبر حيز، راجع بقى رجوك حساباتك، شغلك حيخليك تتميز، نام للساعة 2 ما تنامش، ما انت سنين انت ما بتقومش، ده احنا بنعمل كده لولادنا، مين قاعد معظمنا حيمشي، قول انا واهب تعب البلدي والمصر الأكبر متحيز. لا أي أمور في حياتك، خلي لبلدك أكبر حيز، راجع بقى رجوك حساباتك، شغلك حيخليك تتميز، علق أي أمور في حياتك، خلي لبلدك أكبر حيز، راجع بقى رجوك حساباتك، شغلك حيخليك تتميز، نام الساعة 2 ما تنامش، ما انت سنين انت ما بتقومش، ده احنا بنعمل كده لولادنا، مين قاعد معظمنا حيمشي، قول انا واهب تعب البلدي والمصر الأكبر متحيز. وما بتديش عالفاضي، مش معنى جدودنا ما بخلوش، وترى تاريخك شوف في الماضي، شوف احنا ازاي ما نسيناهوش، نام الساعة 2 ما تنامش، ما انت سنين انت ما بتقومش، ده احنا بنعمل كده لولادنا، مين قاعد معظمنا حيمشي، قول انا واهب تعب البلدي والمصر الأكبر متحيز. علق أي أمور في حياتك، خلي لبلدك أكبر حيز، راجع بقى رجوك حساباتك، شغلك حيخليك تتميز، نام للساعة 2 ما تنامش، ما انت سنين انت ما بتقومش، ده احنا بنعمل كده لولادنا، مين قاعد معظمنا حيمشي، قول انا واهب تعب البلدي والمصر الأكبر متحيز. لا أي أمور في حياتك، خلي لبلدك أكبر حيز، راجع بقى رجوك حساباتك، شغلك حيخليك تتميز، علق أي أمور في حياتك، خلي لبلدك أكبر حيز، راجع بقى رجوك حساباتك، شغلك حيخليك تتميز، نام الساعة 2 ما تنامش، ما انت سنين انت ما بتقومش، ده احنا بنعمل كده لولادنا، مين قاعد معظمنا حيمشي، قول انا واهب تعب البلدي والمصر الأكبر متحيز. وما بتديش عالفاضي، مش معنى جدودنا ما بخلوش، وترى تاريخك شوف في الماضي، شوف احنا ازاي ما نسيناهوش، نام الساعة 2 ما تنامش، ما انت سنين انت ما بتقومش، ده احنا بنعمل كده لولادنا، مين قاعد معظمنا حيمشي، قول انا واهب تعب البلدي والمصر الأكبر متحيز، أكبر متحيز.
قالولي في جملة واضحة حط فيها اسم مصر، جاوبت بحسن نية الجملة هي تحيا مصر، قالولي ارسم علمها سرحت وتخيلت قصر، عليه حراس كتيرة في وسطهم خط ونسر، تحيا مصر تحيا وعيونها تملي صاحية، وعيونها في كل ناحية وفي مليون اتجاه، تحيا مصر حرة تحيا ألف مرة، تحيا مهما يجرى لنهاية الحياة.
السلام عليكم. تفضلوا استريحوا. تفضلوا.
In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most passionate, Mr. President Abdel Fattah Sisi, the President of the Republic, decent life is a sentence reflected as the Egyptians' goal to provide a decent and human life for the Egyptian citizen. Start from eliminating the insecure areas who live there and to be replaced alternate with a very comprehensive housing to maintain their human rights in life that been deprived for years ago. Till the time has arrived, a time for a change that we live, that Egypt pursue to complete and continue despite all challenges. Our countries took the responsibilities of every difficulty to overcome for elevating the lives of the Egyptian people. And here we are now, we live the new reality by the ownership of the President of the Republic that we witnessing with him today, the inaugurations of 11 housing area, alternative housing areas projects for instead of the insecure areas that the political leadership rejected and was able to achieve what is good for them for the alternative housing project. The best to start our day, verses of the Holy Quran recited by the Sheikh, reciter Sharif Asad.
بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا ليغفر لك الله ما تقدم من ذنبك وما تأخر ويتم نعمته عليك ويهديك صراطا مستقيما وينصرك الله نصرا عزيزا. هو الذي أنزل السكينة في قلوب المؤمنين ليزدادوا إيمانا مع إيمانهم ولله جنود السماوات والأرض وكان الله عليما حكيما. صدق الله العظيم.
صدق الله العظيم. جهود حثيثة
Good and great efforts made by the armed forces, our armed forces, to execute and develop the several development projects in Egypt, in particular what we are witnessing today of inaugurations, the alternative housing projects for the insecure areas. About the efforts of the armed forces, Major General Al-Raqib Al-Far, the President of the Engineering Authority for the Armed Forces, to present. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most passionate, Your Excellency, President Abdel Fattah Sisi, the President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, allow me to extend to you and the Egyptian people to inaugurate in the occasion of the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, and wish you happy many returns. It pleases us to inaugurate new projects in the field of housing, alternative housing projects, instead of the insecure areas that disseminated throughout decades without the unplanned urban planning. Since you to assume your office, Your Excellency, Mr. President, you laid out an aggressive plan in the framework of the 2030 plan. You'll excuse us, sir, what concerns us today, 2 points: the quality of life for the Egyptian citizens, in addition to the justice and the participation of resources that was imbalanced for the distribution throughout the Republic, and that we are going to see during the executing projects to overcome the phenomenon of the insecure areas and the unplanned areas. We went through the efforts of the state to develop the insecure areas, in addition to the participation of the armed forces to develop the insecure areas through projects being executed and undergoing and planned to be executed. The efforts of the state, as you issued, Your Excellency, Mr. President, several initiatives, and what we are concerned in today is an initiative of a housing for all Egyptians. In order to achieve the affordable housing and decent life for the people to live with executed set of urban fronts to make it distinct for the housing, in addition of making the furnishing above the middle class for the people to house. As you also ordered to prepare the housing and the housing units of the new furnitures in order for to be moved in the new places to have and live in new house and new furniture to live, and the quantitative leap for their lives. In July, the state issued a set of regulations and urban planning, and on top of which, that through the regulations and terms we eliminate the insecure areas and we maintain the infrastructures of the buildings, whether they are including or for the gas facilitation as well as the power facilitation. This is a picture of the insecure areas and the unplanned areas, and this is the new picture after we've eliminating most of the areas. Still, we have ahead of us new areas to complete. Also, the issue of launching a decent life, what touches is the issue is a great issue and a great project, and what we concern about that we are going to reach in the first phase to 54,000 of housing units. Your Excellency, Mr. President, a decent life initiative being executed for preliminary stage in 2019, in addition to the other one in 2021 for 3 years of a cost 700 billion Egyptian pounds. With the participation of Ministry of Housing, we are executing 22 centers of 20 governorates, 1,403 and 30 areas, and 10,000 of satellite of a cost for the first phase is 260 billion Egyptian pound. What we are focusing to execute 360,000 housing units. All the planning we've did on the shape of Egypt 2052 that is expected through the rates we are working about to reach 190 million Egyptian citizens. The participation of the armed forces to develop the insecure areas with assigned to execute 1 million housing units of 653 billion Egyptian pound. Among of them, 517,000 of 350 billion Egyptian pounds, whether they are middle class or social housing that we are exploring and present in the insecure areas. We are executing 110 housing units of cost 139 billion Egyptian pound, and the following part, the initiative you've initiated, Your Excellency, Mr. President, to establish 500 housing units regarding to develop the capitals of the cities of the capitals and the great governorates to execute areas as alternative of insecure areas is 200,000 housing units of a cost 700 billion Egyptian pounds. And if we made 20,000, we are going to reach a percentage of execution, the establishment for the alternative housing 40%. As a total of the housing, Your Excellency, Mr. President, whether it is the regular one to execute, we're reaching 310,000 housing units for the insecure areas of a cost of 109 billion Egyptian pound. Mostly 86 areas to execute. We executed and finished 40,000 housing units of a cost of 15 billion Egyptian pound. The project being executed up till now 40,000. We've executed Asmarat 1 and 2 and 3. 425 housing building were executing of a capacity 18,000 and 64 housing units. We've already executed Ahalina 1 and 2. It is planned to open today of a total 150 building of a capacity 2,050 housing units. We've executed Al Mahrousa 1 and 2 with the coordination of the Cairo governorate. We've executed 190 building of a capacity 14,000 housing units. We've executed also Bashair 1, 2, 3 in Alexandria. 391 buildings were executed and finished. We've already executed development works of Helwan areas to the east of Al Qawmiya and Al Hadidi, and we've already elevated the efficiency of the landscape as a total, as well as the infrastructure. We've already worked in Ras Gharib following the floods in 2017, and this is the shape that was before the city of Ras Gharib. And the main problem that the city were built on a way that was unplanned in the place of the floods. 470 houses were executed, 115 workshops and 14 schools that their efficiency were elevated. We've already developed 46 unplanned areas in Cairo and Al-Giza of a complete markets and works of lights for the streets. The projects that are undergoing that reach 70,000 housing units of Al Khayala project. That is a project that has 140 buildings of 2,068 housing units that was completely done. I will show you, sir, a short video for the shape of the buildings with the cooperation of the Ministry of Social Solidarity that furnished the rest of the buildings. According to your directives, we're not going to inaugurate an area without executing the necessary services requirements for the people to live. It is planned at the end of November to end the whole project in a percentage of 100%. This is the mosque of 1,000 prayer and the church at the end of the year will be finished, a police checkpoint, and the civil protection buildings, post office. This is the shape of the housing, the old buildings who were finished, and the last layer of the pavement to be completed, left till the end of this year to completely finish the whole project. Among the undergoing projects, the Bashair al-Khair project 4 till 7 and 8 to be executed on an area of 250 fiddens, to be executed of 816 building and 44,000 of housing units to be executed in the north directions through Alexandria. These are the rates of works that are very high scale rated to be end in the same quality as the Bashair al-Khair 1 and 2 and 3. One of the problems that we had before, due to the floods and the Dismay village, were executed in the same manner without the revision of the scientific process of choosing the sites. Due to the curses, it is the current cheap 256 who were executed of housing units. In addition to, we executed 250 farms for reason the chicken and birds for the inhabitants of the village. The farms, a coordinated shape for each building. Each building has its own farm for the inhabitant to follow their work. This is the shape of the interior finishing, stairs, bathrooms and kitchens inside the buildings. We've already finished the Dismay, and it is planned at the end of this month to be completed. This is the shape of the floods which took place in March 22. As you can see, sir, the whole village were nearly devastated. Next slide, please. Ahalina 3, one of the undergoing projects to be executed now in the space of 35 fiddens. The percentage of execution has reached to 45%, has 35 buildings to contain 3,212 housing units to be executed by the elements of the engineers in the central zone. This is the shape of Ahalina 4. We've already explored the issue before you, sir, to maintain the shape and the history of the constructions. We've executed 3,067 housing units. We've maintained the old shape, and we've already made cafeterias. The size of the garbage and wreckage that reached 1.5 square meter. We've already removed 600,000 square meters. We've already started to make the preparations to establish and construct the buildings. Ahalina 5, as assigned by you, sir, last month we've already started to work. We have 3 zones. These 3 zones had old buildings to be removed through 1 month effective from now. In addition to what we've concerned, please go back. We've already talked to Ihab and what you've marked on the main road in the backward. No, the second one. No. We've said these points to go who belong to, and we've already said the same words here. Yes, sir. I want to say to the government that, and the ministers or to the governorates, when we see a place this on Suez streets, right, Ihab, and this is the emergency access and Arabi roads, and this is what we are doing it now and finishing now, yes? When we talk about these areas, under the achievement and preparation, we said also to prepare or to try to make this that was for unused chicken farms. And of course, yes, it's not going to work right that way to optimize these lands that the following the government or different ministries to take and make projects for the people that has housing and services, and maybe to contain workshops to make the works beside the housing. I say this to the government to help Dr. Mustafa to help us to, once we remove or we take this for the benefit for the people. We hope to pay attention to this, whether it is the Minister of the Work sector or the local development. We are making it with a high cost to change it, as you can see. And I hope that this not actually to be shown clearly on TVs, screens. No, please have a look here. If I see Ihab to get to the option that you removed of 1.5 square meter of wreckages and garbage, please stop here as state citizens, media personnel, intellectuals. What we are saying in here, I see it in every spot in Egypt. I see. Isn't it, Ihab? Truly, yes. I do not say this for a reason. It is our country to be changed, but just pay your attention to, if we talk about 1.5 million housing units that we are going to make, I said this repeatedly, not for a reason, but it is done by the Egyptian money, God willing. But I see once again, once more, what you are seeing now. By the way, half of Egypt is like that. I do not know if we are see this on the axes of the road. And back to the Disney village. No, what, the pictures that of the following the disaster in the film. Yes, stop here, please. What I would like to say, the village were built on lands, as you can see, mostly, isn't it true? Yes. These lands were agricultural lands. When we did this, it wasn't in an agricultural land. We made it in a desert land that are not subject for floods. What I would like to say, do not think it is not the concern of the government or myself. No, people, you live in this in rich lands to be lost like this way and live in the open desert in Egypt. Egypt's desert on a space is more than 90% of its land, and you're going to build on the land that you are live and work, regardless whether it is in the path of the floods or not. What I concern about is just to leave this land and live in the very dried land. this land has lakes receiving water without any lifting stations. The issue is ours. By the way, when I'm coming in the ring road, the volume and the size of buildings on these areas is huge, and all of them unplanned and unhealthy for the people. We say this is because of the government, the state, the people, the population growth, all together. Say it, name it as you like. You should stop before this point, because we are not going to deal and treat this without you. For the people, by their awareness of what I'm saying, you may say that I would like to stay here before my land. Next to you would say the same, and etc. You are eating the green land, making money for you and for others, and of course for the country. And you are change it as you can see. And therefore, when we have a situation like that, making in, can you see the new chip or the new picture? As you can see, this is the Dasmi village. And I was hoping to bring also the media coverage that have made following the disaster. I say this again, whether the media coverage that has a vision talk the same way, or cover it as the unachieving government. I imagine that the media coverage used to talk that was the underachiever of the government before the citizens, maybe, I don't know. When we decide to make this, we decided to make it, as you can see, and even we could say this model will be done the same way in the country, despite the culture, that to make what you can see in the farmers to be inside the houses. We're trying to make it healthy for you, and even for raising the sheep, to make it outside the house will be healthy for you, and back again, whether the media coverage for what happened in the Disney and for the areas that were devastated due to the faults, does it has the awareness of the size of the problems? Why do I say this? I want the people to talk, and I want to have free of expression, but they should understand the issue. Was it because of the fault of the state, the fault of the citizens, or both of us? I don't know. And by the way, in all the buildings on the agriculture's fault of home, they might say that was because of the local authorities. But the trespassing is huge. If I would like to mention something before one might say that you're repeating this again, just to record stances on our shoulder, myself, the government, and you. This isn't my issue, myself, or the government, or the people. It is the issue of the problem of the whole state. I see this for the media, the intellectuals, universities specialized in sociology and their development to study this point and propose solutions. This reflects 30 to 40%, if it is not more, of the whole space of Egypt. What mentioned by Ahab of 1 million square meters of wreckages, and why the state did not take or remove it. It is a combined effort between the state and the citizens. If I make planned houses, I would be able to make healthy system to remove the wreckages. If you say it, the previous picture, I won't be able to do this. The vehicles couldn't be able to enter. This is one point. The second point, we've already past 3 years on negotiations of cleans and companies. I say this to be aware, and I use the chances to be here with you, present something like that by saying with joyful, yes, I would like to complete this joy, not to have something unplanned, not just to upset you, myself, and the government. When we talked and mentioned the companies, the local development and the environment 3 years ago to present the issue with Dr. Mustafa, we found that the sides do not misunderstand me and take me wrong. When I deal or tackle a point with you to understand it, you say it's just a word in the paper or in the social communication platforms. You should be aware of the issue and how to tackle it. I say this to you, that the size, if we collect from Egypt, and correct me, Dr. Mustafa, from Egypt, to collect for or allocations for the cleaning is 800 million Egyptian pound. From all the flats, the workshops is 800 million Egyptian pound. For Cairo as itself in western eastern district, when we talk with the companies, believe me, I don't want to say the figure, you won't believe me, for not the whole of Cairo, it may be the cost would reach to 2 to 2.5 billion Egyptian pound if we wish to do so. And by the way, believe me, as a result of we are not having a system in building, as a result, the efficacy of the cleaning works won't be in the same level that we wish for. Taking into consideration that your cooperation as citizen to minimize any chance of such wreckages or to enter in the system quickly, so I was walking some days ago in the axis of Al-Assar General, extending from the bridge that we named the Al-Assar axis, starting from the biggest or the big bridge that enters in the 6th of October and the desert road. It is above of Al-Warraq district. Tahya Masr axis. No, I mentioned the whole axis. Tahya Masr is from the start of the road, but we said that we are naming, or we're going to name it in Al-Assar. When I was walking without any accompanying people, I found that the whole people putting the garbages in the middle of the road. So when we had small boxes, the people refused the allocations of these cars, and they left these vehicles in the middle of the road. What can we do? I say to you, what we should do ultimately is in a clear area to remove 1.5 million square or ton. And by the way, when we mentioned this decision 3 years ago, we found that the value of the wreckages and the garbages to be removed were 40 million. Any issue I mentioned before you that we pay attention for as the government and the citizens themselves, that they cannot be succeeded without the participation of all of us. I mentioned the point of the trespassing and the encroachment and the unplanned areas, and we found the scream of the people of not having a good system for cleaning. But how can we do this? We will face the unplanned building issue. I have one of two options. I look and leave, or I look at work. I cannot just look at these pictures and stay still. And of course, you do the same. Talking about the size of the wreckages and the garbages, and we 3.5 years ago were 2.8 million for the people who submitted. It could be more than that, 2.8 million. It isn't a point or the issue of a president or nor the government, it's a state issue and the people. The volume of the garbages in any country in the world would be 2.8 million. Shouldn't be the same way. We should take care of a point. We are trying to fix it, and a decent life. I will move to talk about it, to prepare. So you have it. You have the point. Yes, we have the whole works of the engineering authority. Just to give it to our colleague to tackle. It's another issue. Yes, please continue, Ihab. Next. Developing the capitals of governorates and the big cities. We've already started 13 governorates, and we're executing 108,000 housing units of 30%. To be end at the end of this next year, God willing. This is the shape we've reached in Cairo Governorate, in Al Salam districts of execution percentage 50% in Al Masara, 25% in Suez, 31% in Zimaita, 34% of execution in Kafr al-Sheikh, 20% in Al Gharbiyya, 18% in Al Fayoum Governorate, 30% in Al Qalyubiyya Governorate, 18% in Al Sharqiyya, 38%, Qina 21%, in Minya 38%, so had 33% of execution works. And this is a shape is planned for housing. Up till now, Your Excellency, with the coordination of the Mr. Premier, we are looking for lands to complete and execute the project. We are going to execute 108,000 housing units. Let me just to rest you assured with the people listen to us and the media. We said the people not to approach the agricultural lands, not to approach. We said that we are going to propose in the capital of the governorates available lands within the governorates, whether owned by the state or the work sector, are not fit to be in the middle of the housing blocks. We said to take these lands to be available for the citizens for housing, not to say for the people not to build without not having an alternative. The plan was 500,000. He had mentioned 108,000. Once lands were available by the governorates or others, who will be able to make the planned 500,000 housing unit. If we mention this figure, we should say also how much. If we took for a unit is 500,000, but for the 500,000 is about 125 billion Egyptian pound for the whole plan. The million would cost 500 billion Egyptian pound. The issue isn't economic, but we are trying to seriously to solve the problem, and the issue is presented is another issue. Housing of 3 to 4 floors. In front of them, unfortunately, will be the farms. We said this before, to have a farm before each flat. Anyone wish to raise chickens or something will provide you a place for that. I say this to affirm that we are serious to provide for the people. And once again, what we are doing, I think, is a completed one. As you can see, as we are going to inaugurate today, no one is doing this but the government, not the real estate developer, but we as government and the state. What we are will make, as the book says, hope that you help us. It's not going forward. 10 years that we are ready within 1 to 2 to 3 years to finish what you are saying now. The plan project, you said, sir, on one of the meeting, once we opened the tunnels of Ahmed Badawi #2, you've ordered and directed to see the Al Ruwaysat area in the north of Sinai. We've already formed a committee of the engineering authority. Back, please. As you can see, sir, this is the shape of Al Ruwaysat. As you can see, there was no plans, and the space area 1,100 fidans. As you can see, it was a devastated area. Next, other areas were built that was outside and also of the allocated area. Ministry of Housing with the governorate of the south of Sinai, as well as the local unit. This housing is new. It is subject, as we develop and replan the existing plans to be removed. It is possible, with the coordination of the governorate, to receive housing units. These old areas, God willing, will be within the process of elevating the efficacy. This is the shape is required to raise in the efficacy of the old areas, transform the efficacy of the sanitation networks, as well as the electrical current network, as well as the communication network. And if we executed this, God willing, within 2 weeks will be complete to be ready for the ratification. There was an open planning made by the Ministry of the Housing without any executions, and we're going to coordinate with Dr. Asim to revive the idea of the urban planning to go in line with the area. Next, developing the Egyptian country, as I said to you, sir, that we are concerned about is right now to make 54,000 housing units. These are outlooks of the housing among of the problems that we not received yet the lands, and Dr. Mustafa, God willing, within the next 2 weeks to take a great size of lands to be execute the plan. This is the backward shape and the shape of the farms of each flat. I would like the people with us and of course the writers in the papers and even the media personnel and the TV to have a coverage. Where is going to be done? Where is it going to be done? It is going to be done in the country. A flat, as you can see, as it looks like, is going to be in the country for the citizens. Their boys and girls going to live there. Do you think what the level is going to be like? I wish to say a harsh word to you. Why you don't wish to live or to dream for your country, for yourself? Why you are satisfying of the minimum and by saying that this is our circumstances, but I say to you that we are capable to change this. If I enter a village of 100 houses of one floor each, I can make it to look like that, affiliated with their farms. If you are going to help us to make what you can see, by the way, in the New Delta and Sinai, it is the same as you can see now. Why? Because it is us, we do it because of the integrated and completed plan for each building, houses, schools, churches, mosques, but we are going to have a remedy for a previous situation that are not going to be cured without the full efforts of all of us. Why you don't want to wish to dream with us? I don't want for the 54,000. This is for Dr. Mustafa. Yes. Please complete. I would like to say something, sir, with the, regarding the issue of the Egyptian country. 60% of what I worked through is were unplanned. Next, another area that are going to start with the north of craftsmen Al-Harafin in Al-Dawika on area of 60 fiddins assigned to have 27 housing building, 3 of them for the breadwinner women, and 54 workshops, in addition to 44 commercial shops, in addition to different areas that include a parking for the microbus, a school of art, crafts, industry. The 60 Fidan, as you can see here, has a very solid type of land. The nature of the land is very difficult. The costs might be increased because of the difficulty of the land, but God willing will be executed. We've already started the drilling works in the area. Back again, please. Please look at this point I mark before you look at this. By the way, people when have a flat of 2 rooms, they made another room and make an extension for the building, not to say make it 2 rooms for the flats and let them work. No, Ihab, I know people doing this for their children. Please go ahead. Next, the added thing that we've mentioned, and as you, sir, pointed out, we have these areas in Al Khayala. As we mentioned, you rejected to be inaugurated, despite we've finished the 100%, as well as the Ministry of Solidarity. We are making the other services. In fact, Al Amal City, we've made Chinzo Abbey access, and this part of 1600 of a copy of 1600 meters. As you ordered to use some of the lands, in addition to this area, we are going to make a compound of workshops to take these lands from the armed forces under the bridge and the sides. This area of 3 fadans that's being cut off the lands of the armed forces to execute the services area. Next, of the workshops that would have 187 workshops and an administrative building of 16 workshop, in addition to the health point to be a civilized one. We've already opened all the accesses in the direction of the Al Amal city. Please go back. The previous one, please. Please. I would like to say that the area of Al Amal city that you had an unpleasant name. To make such an access, we had 2 things. Power bridge towers, electrical towers, and housing. To open an access, we've removed more than 2,500 flat been removed to Ahalina 1 and 2 in order to make a road for them, and we've completed by a bridge to Gardenia and the first settlement at Al Sawis Road. In order to do so, regardless of the cost of the road and the bridge, bring me back what we are going to do under this for these people. This is the outer, no, not yet. This is the scope is going to be civilized one for the people to provide what they deserve in the framework of a decent life. The second part, we are going to execute 106 workshop of a space of an area of 16 to 14 square meter, and we are going to execute 35 workshop of 24 square meter, and in the same area small paytooks are going to be open to do an income for them. If we're talking the size, we are going to reach 320 workshop, or about 317 that we have left. 317 house that has a new source of income. I mentioned the owner of the workshop. In addition to this workshop, we will have 150 other small shop. Next, this is the shape of the small shops under the bridge. did not affect the road. Excuse me, Ahab, do not be harsh of my intervention. If you may, I said to Ahab, if you make this bridge without anything under it, it's going to be a place for garbages or for the people to put anything else. Do something right for the people. Do something good and right for the people. And by the way, at the sides of the road 3 and 3, their sides that had houses and buildings for the people to provide a place for their work. I would like to say these aren't the solution just to look for a place to do or a housing. These are cost high. These your money that we are making, fixing things, so we're not doing something new. Please go ahead, Ihab. Yes, sir. We're completing the works of the construction at the axis at the end of this year, as you've directed, do not exceed 6 months. Next. To reach to the point of inauguration, God willing, and you are being with us, we are going 200 or 15 Fedan being executed by 18 months. It is notably mentioned, it's not only the engineering authority, but the central zone, in addition to their branches to develop the decent life. 1,400 housing units of area of 90 square meter, all facilitation and services were executed, administrative building, courts, parks for the children, school of 28 classes, and with a church that serve Ahalina 1 and 2 and a mosque of 800 prayer. We've already established a water plant in order to avoid the problems of the pressure water, the drinking water to be distributed for the housing units of a space of 1,400 square meter. We've already executed 4 malls, in addition to 211 commercial shops. In the project, Cairo Governorates, Ministry of Housing, 2 national banks participated with us. We've executed the project by the help of 3 consultative office, 24 specialized company, 10,000 of engineer and workers. To conclude, allow me, sir, to extend the thanks to the armed forces to give us the chance to execute such a project. And I may say that even this project were executed by us, we are maintaining the responsibilities assigned to the engineering authority for the interest of the armed forces without any breach. Everyone is working with us, officers and soldiers. Everyone has the patriotism nature to execute such a project. To include, sir, I would like to extend my thanks to give me the chance to execute this project completely, and we are capable with the Almighty God to help to execute, and peace be upon you all. Allow me, sir, to inaugurate the Ahalina 2 project through video conference. Engineer Ali Abdul Mu'ti Ali, the engineer of the authority of Ahalina Ali, and the supervisor of the project. Any orders and directives, sir? Thank you. I'll excuse you, sir, to present the executive situation of Ahalina project that in last Thursday were presented before the Chief of the Armed Forces, and we were reviewing the executive situation to execute it as planned. Next. Is going to enter 1 year the engineering authority assigned to execute in the 27 center, 184 village and affiliated villages of 750 and satellite that reach 5,000 and more. We are working in Al Giza till Al Asmaliya till the whole 10 governorates. Move forward the executive stance for the planned project. It is mostly the previous table, please. Back the total of our project divided according to the mobilization forms, the sanitation, drinking water, health, sport, local development, electricity and irrigation. We have received the total of the project, sir, 5,207 projects. We've received 4,922 projects. Of a percentage reached 91%. The executive stance is 49% of total, and the percentage is less than we hope due to some lands not received yet. Hospitals on the state of the designing yet, and we are postponing the roads to be executed once we finish all the facilitation and the facilities that affected the rest of the works. The plan table for execution, it is a simplified one for all the fields, the field of water. God willing, and with the help of the Almighty God, the whole project of water is planned on the June next year to finish all the lifting project, and the purification plant is going to be postponed because of due to the size of construction and the electromechanic volume, and we hope that all the assets to be from the Egyptian market, but we may say that we've reached to 75% of the market in Egypt, but the rest of materials brought to be are brought to be from outside, from abroad. The field of the sanitation, the lifting plants and the networks, treatment plants to be finished in June. The field of health unit and ambulance point to be finished next year. And as you know, sir, that the hospitals would take more time due to the technicalities of their work. Ministry of Health is working with us to make or to reach the highest quality. The hospitals, their pro-clinics, the machineries, the issue is different. Next, the field of youth and sports, we are going to finish. The state is easy and is facilitated, and the field of agriculture at the end of the year to be finished of reach of a percentage of execution of 100%. To be finished at the end of the year. The field of electricity, we've already started, but yet some coordination is left with the Ministry of the electricity, as well as Mr. Premier, the irrigation sector, building bridges, have no problem. So we have the able to finish at the end of this year, and the elevating the efficacy of bridges, the feed of roads. Stop here, please. The irrigation. IHAB, we're going to do the lining of the canal lining. Yes, I'm going to present it. You will excuse us, parts of irrigation to be executed by us and the Ministry of Housing and the construction body, but some parts to be executed by the Ministry of Irrigation. But as you've directed us, sir, to follow up, once you say that you are going to finish in June 2022, yes, will be presented, sir. Yes, okay. Once we finish up with the network at the end of December, and maybe before, so the inside roads will be finished, along with the things that we are following with the Ministry of Petroleum. Some roads that waited to be paved after the natural gas and communication to finish the work will go into complete. It is planned to execute the housing project in 8 months. Once we receive the land, will hasten the road speedily and quickly to end up with the works. Bring me back, please, the stance of the lands. Next, 108 pieces of land undergoing to be received to increase our rates. Bring us the ministries, some projects by the coordination of the ministry that are for project transforming or establishing the natural gas post offices and the irrigation you've already asked about to enter the natural gas. This is the natural gas to be executed for the 52 centers, by us and the Ministry of Housing. Next. Also, the natural gas to enter the new housing that we are going to do, God willing. The size of works is 100 or 16,000 of lengths, 16,000 meters of length. Their problem is to once they finish the sanitation so it is going from the bottom to the above, complete, to enter the communication and post offices, and we have the 52 centers as well as villages. This is the executive situation of 52 centers to be reached by the fiber cables, networks, as well. To have a full system for the whole sentence. We've already developed 620 post offices of a percentages average. Details and times are available. Back complete to cover the mobile networks as they execute 500 locations. Next, the irrigation. This is the canal lining, and the Ministry of Irrigation is doing a great job, as well as the construction body. Next, it is decided to make the lining of 2,450 kilometers. We've already finished 900 kilometers, 90 kilometers of a coast, 9.9 1.1 billion Egyptian pound, and the ministry is doing a great job and a great effort. In addition to 143 million of the project of protection of the floods, there's a total of works to move on from a village, not to go backward to it, God willing. This is the shape of the canal lining. This is the old and the new one. Some places is piled with rocks. In fact, sir, next all ministers exerting all their efforts with highest coordination in the armed forces, making a conference in the General Secretariat in Thursday with Dr. Mustafa, Mr. Premier, to review the execution stand for the whole project. Any order, sir? Dreams achievable isn't just a slogan or a fantasy. It is a reality and a path chosen by Egypt privily with full determination in all fields, in particular the field of housing and the elevation of the insecure areas. Let us watch a documentary film entitled of Dreams to be Achieved.
الصورة كانت صعبة والمشهد كان مليان جراح ومناطق غير آمنة اختفت منها العدالة الاجتماعية وغاب عنها أهم حقوق الإنسان. أجيال جديدة بتتولد وتعيش على حافة الخطر. عشان كده كان لازم فكرنا يتغير وبالإرادة والعمل نواجه أصعب تحدي.
لن نتردد أبداً على ان احنا نقف امام هذه الظاهره ونوقفها عند حدها. من حقنا كأمة انها تاخد مكانها بالسلام وبالاستقرار وبالبنى وبالتعمير.
التطوير ابتدى بحلم كبير والحل كان إرادة التغيير، ومن هنا كان وعد القيادة السياسية بالقضاء على المناطق غير الآمنة وفقاً لخطة زمنية ومراحل تنفيذية نجحت خلالها الدولة المصرية وعلى مدى 7 سنين في خلق عشرات التجمعات العمرانية البديلة للمناطق غير الآمنة.
حجم الجهد اللي عملته الدولة المصرية في إطار حقوق الإنسان، إن كان في عندي 250 ألف أسرة موجودين بيعيشوا حياة غير آدمية على الإطلاق. عندما توفر 250 ألف شقة مفروشة عشان نقول للمواطن ده إن مصر شايفاك ولن تسمح إن هي تتركك تعيش كده أنت وأبنائك. إحنا بنقود بلادنا بالأمانة والشرف والعزة عشان نعمل مجتمع يليق بمصر.
الصورة اتبدلت والحياة اتغيرت والعجلة دايرة والوعد مستمر، والإعلان عن مصر دولة حضارية بدون مناطق غير آمنة أمل بيتحقق كل يوم وفي كل اتجاه على أرضنا الطيبة. والنهاردة وفي مجال مشروعات الإسكان البديل للمناطق غير الآمنة بنعلن عن ميلاد تجمعات عمرانية جديدة بمشروع أهالينا 2 اللي تمت تحت إشراف المنطقة المركزية العسكرية للقوات المسلحة. 1400 وحدة ضمن 34 عمارة سكنية، تجمع حضاري بيضم 112 محل تجاري و4 مولات ومركز شباب ومدرسة ومسجد وكنيسة. ومحطة رفع مياه. ويفضل لوزارة الإسكان دورها في ملحمة البناء والنماء. وفي حي السلام خدت الوزارة خطوات للأمام وبنت 184 عمارة بتضم 4416 وحدة سكنية ضمن مشروع معا. ده غير الانتهاء من المرحلة الأولى للسكن البديل في حي السلام واللي تمت بإجمالي 2171 وحدة سكنية. ده كمان غير إنشاء 226 وحدة تجارية وخدمات ومدرسة ومركز طفولة ومركز طبي. ولو اتنقلنا لمنطقة سن العجوز بحدائق 6 أكتوبر هنشوف صروح معمارية بديلة للمناطق غير الآمنة. بتتكون من 104 عمارة بإجمالي 2500 وحدة سكنية. وفي روضة السيدة زينب استمرت ملاحم البناء والعمل. قدرنا نفتح طاقة أمل بإنشاء 16 عمارة سكنية بتضم 816 وحدة. أمل جديد بيتحقق في محافظة البحر الأحمر في مجال مشروعات الإسكان بديل المناطق العشوائية. في الغردقة انتهت وزارة الإسكان من إنشاء 545 وحدة سكنية بمنطقة عشش الجبل في راس غارب و850 وحدة سكنية و250 بيت في منطقة زرزارة في الغردقة. وفي منطقة زرزارة بسفاجة تم إنشاء 3 عمارات و174 منزل بعدد 224 وحدة سكنية. أما في القصير وتحديداً في منطقة الكلاحين تم الانتهاء من إنشاء 76 وحدة سكنية. وفي منطقة راس البر تم إنشاء 12 عمارة بتضم 250 وحدة. وفي طور سيناء في الجبيل تم إنشاء 62 منزل بدوي. ولو اتنقلنا لشرم الشيخ هنشوف نقلة عمرانية بملامح حضارية. تم إنشاء 496 وحدة سكنية ضمن مشروعات الإسكان البديل للمناطق غير الآمنة. والخطوات اللي بتقوم بيها الدولة مش مجرد توفير سكن بديل، فبالتنسيق مع وزارة التضامن الاجتماعي واللي بتقوم بدورها في تأسيس الوحدات السكنية من أساس وفرش وأجهزة كهربائية وخلق بيئة جديدة تليق بالمصريين. ده كمان غير دور الجمعيات الأهلية وجمعية الهلال الأحمر اللي بيشاركوا في جهود الدولة لزيادة الوعي المجتمعي وتغيير سلوك سكان المناطق غير الآمنة. ده كمان غير مساندة الشباب المتطوع في تقديم الدعم للسكان في المناطق السكنية الجديدة.
في فرق جامد بين العيشه الاولانيه والعيشه دي.
المكان اللي احنا كنا عايشين فيه غير ادمي بالمره ان احنا نعيش فيه.
بيتي القديم كان فيه حشرات وكنت متضايقه ما كنتش عارفه اخد راحتي.
انا بشكر الرئيس السيسي على اللي احنا فيه. احنا دلوقتي بقينا عايشين.
احنا بنشكرك جدا جدا على انتشالنا من العشوائيات ومن كل حاجه وحشه وقعدتنا في اماكن نظيفه
عايزه اشكر الرئيس السيسي اللي هو جاب لنا شقق جميله والحمد لله يعني عشان كنا ساكنين في عشش وما كناش عارفين نعيش.
بطول مصر وعرضها بنفتح كل يوم على أرضها أبواب أمل وبيوت أمان حققنا بيها كرامة الإنسان. خطينا الصعب وقدرنا نعدي ونحقق الأحلام.
To eliminate the unsafe areas do not include only to provide a decent place for living for the human, but building them into relief of cultural manners and direction. About the efforts of the Ministry of Social Solidarity, the Minister of Mrs. Al-Qamash, to present the efforts of the ministry. In the name of Allah, the most passionate, the most merciful, Your Excellency, Mr. President Abdel Fattah Sisi, the President of the Republic, ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon you all. Since 2014, the Egyptian state adopted the principles of justice in the economical and social policy and the adoption of the human rights, and not to leave any place without a development and fill in the gap. The pivot of human was touching the heart of the Egyptian state, as we can see the program of developing the Egyptian village in a decent life. It is in a path of reform and reconstruction. Building the state is part and principle of building a human. The Ministry of the Social Solidarity is focusing currently to invest in human, in fact, we are working on the individual's family and the society in the same place because they all link together. When we talk about the investment, we're talking about the most needed, the one, and for development and care, including the undeveloped areas. The Ministry of the Social Solidarity is working on 3 pivots. The first one is regarding the housing environment to be prepared without executing the housing units, and the second point is to study such societies and the engagement in fighting their challenges to be exist in order to lay out a systematic manner to study these societies. And the third one is to provide the economic and social services and to work on changing socially as well as in the manner to provide a decent life for the citizen to live in pride. Through the last period, we've finished to execute and establish a total of 20,575 housing units in 3 phases of a total 12,056 units. In fact, the 4th phase of already finished 8,000 of total 20,575 units to coordinate with the ministers of the governors on the mechanism of handing overs, and helped also by Tahya Masr Fund and other executing bodies, as well as the NGOs and other entities, as well as the Domieta Society for building furniture, and the Northern Central Zone, and the military production. As you directed, sir, to design a model of the rooms and the housing to go in line with the size in the new communities, and we've already designed 3 models in order to include the execution more services to make in the same course by forming a committee to receive them with considering the Gouda and the standardization. And the last part that we are concerned in photo to be acquainted with the characteristics of the inhabitants. Firstly, we are looking at the general direction to their inhabitants, whether they are pleased of having more and vast places, green sites, so they were pleased to feel in secure, not just to have a closed door in them, but having facilities that are not exist in the past. Firstly, that they will feel afraid of the new citizens, of a change of culture, by asking how am I going to go to work using the transportation with the relevant ministers. We provided the acceptable and available assist. The percentage of illiteracy in the areas we've taken a portion and a population of the people used to live in the insecure areas that reached 41%, 26% never entered the school at all, including more than 13% were out of their primary or preparatory school. We've confronted by making the classes for raising the literacy of 1 million citizens with the coordination of the Al-Azhar and other relevant entities. With respect to laborhood, or rather the manpower, where 70% of their work that are irregular, doesn't mean that the percentage of the poverty is great, but there was more than that. But the challenge is the irregular work or the unemployment or the quality of life. Today we've already fixed the quality of life, but the other challenge is to find irregular and systematic works to search for the available opportunities for such communities. Apart and a great and a very important point of such a study to find these points, to convince the new inhabitants. The part of the monthly spending, the average is 2,570. Thanks God, only they're not actually under the line of poverty, but we may say is the income is irregular, and of course they have some families that very low, especially the breadwinner or the disabled ones or unemployment of one of the members of the family. Mostly more than 45% is spending on food, and the rest goes for housing and transportation. In our study, in the food cards, we are coordinating with the Ministry of Supply. They do not have these cards. Sometimes that they are enlisted for the extended families, but by the coordination of the Ministry of Supply for the entitlement of the families to be studied digitally with the Ministry of the Social Services to review their stations or the situation. And the third part that we are working without the preparation and the study is the part regarding the awareness and change in the manners that may contain the great challenges, but which is the path, but it is impossible. Once we classify the data, we'll find that the young generation, that of course the hope exists for the upcoming generation to look at and invest in them, any cost for them, their return will be bigger. The older generation of some beliefs and direction represent a challenge, but with the participation of the NGOs, civil societies, and the religious societies would ease the path. We're working on 12 cases that may be a hinder for the path of development. In fact, they represented the soft power for Egypt, the issue of health, the health of mother and child, the cleansing and the paying attention to the disabled, and confronting the addictions and smoking and the household or violence that has a great portion for the activities. All these issues, we are tailoring a study for a message for each case, and we launching a campaign entitled By Awareness Egypt is Changing to the Better, that is targeting to thousands of 4,000 of the families. For those that are going to be moved from the insecure areas and the slums to the alternative housing areas. In such a campaign that's targeting more than one strategy, not working on the awareness, we're working on the awareness vis-a-vis the service. If you are working in the health of birth, you should have health center talking about the birth, and the idea is the result to approach the service to use and to change the citizen, not just laying out the message and leave. The early marriage, 33% of the families, their female or women married before 13 years old. But the issue, we will used to look for the positive point. The new generation, 90% of their new generation thinks that the sound age of marriage is 20 to 25 years old. But in the middle, we might find some direction that unpleasant and undesirable in the issue of the to find a problem of the female in the early age that reached more than 30%, that made this crime, the circumcision, that we found that more than 30% of their families and their girls wish not to do such a circumcision. This is that we are targeting. And the birth health, we may say that 82% do not pay attention, but after the 4th month, that we are coordinating with the Ministry of Health that focusing in this area. But there is a positive initiative that would say that 90%, more than 90% is going to this direction. And the positive education, we may find that the 45% is using the manner of or the style of hitting the children. If we are hitting a better way of raising their children positively, that has bolstering for their personalities. So we are working on this, but there is approaching of the positive raising for the families of an increasing percentage of 37%. They, of course, certainly they love their sons and children, but they do not know the sound ways of raising them. And the best way is to have a direct contact because of the acceptable percentage of literacy, not to use the messages on the mobiles and the social platforms. So we are engaging with them directly by doing in-field and inside workshops. Some works in these areas that they are ready to be expanded, whether they are working in private. 2/3 or the third of women in these areas never had any training of the work. So this is that we encourage. They are praising the issues of the disabled of great intention that made more than 90% know fully or are fully aware of their rights. Whether they require a health and intellectual rehabilitation for them that produce good results and they are actually approaching, the percentage of the approaching is more than 90%, that who are expanding actually the kindergarten places for the children, that transmit actually the habit for the similar kids. Irregular migration aren't exist. Our strategy of direct engagement through three things: we do not work alone, we work with the civil societies. 18 societies are helping, and we have volunteers of different societies other than the volunteers of the civil societies. We have 1,700 of social pioneer of women that have a great impact of culture to unify the message. And of course we have a committee of values that have you, as you directed us. We are cooperating with the governmental and relevant ministries such as Ministry of Culture, Ministry of House, because they are working more of developing the human resources and investment. Special activities of women and families, we are making it through activities, not just by promise, literacy classes, educational cooking classes. Families feel very happy by making a very small celebrations in an institute, for example. So we received in one day more than 3,000 families require services and awareness that make the people feel that the state see them. We expanding with schools, in particular with the fund of confronting addiction, to aware our youth with the help of the Egyptian Red Crescent by making the personal health cleansing. And these are services of the disabled areas, disabled people, that new methodologies were emerged through their engagement with them. Campaigns of recovery of addictions showed a very average percentage, and 3 clinics were established for the women and the girls who've already allocated a hotline in the 1623 to receive requests for a recovery. Through the last 7 months, we've received 5,000 requests. We have 27 recovery centers to be distributed through these centers. We have projects to allow a consent for them to be entered in the labor market, and we cooperating with my colleagues, Mr. Minister of Interior, to the follow-up care for those who were recovered, in particular if they were jailed before. Tools of cleansing and were distributed by relevant entities through the past areas. We've already made this in a very quick budget that served more than 1,600,000 families for the beneficiary of different services. For the billion is doing a great job. There are a billion that reached to 1,530,000 beneficiaries. I would like to thank you, sir, and I'll excuse us to show up a documentary film of 3 minutes on their reactions, or the families' reactions, by when they were moved from the insecure areas to better places. Once I came here, firstly I was fully joyful by finding everything I needed. They said to us there is a symposium, and there is a checkup for the children before and after pregnancy, and all the vaccines to be taken. In the kindergarten, the miss said to me they want to see the children from 0 till 3 years old to be aware of they are getting, or to be aware of any disabilities they might have. I've never visited a place to allow me and give me or let me free to talk. We had no engagement in the glance. Once we arrived here, we found gatherings, we had such workshops and symposiums. I were totally isolated when I was there in the slums. My son is disabled, that requires several insightful and special classes such as to talk and to speak. This center is a societal center that teaches sewing and other activities in a very short time, 3 months, getting a certificate. God willing, if I would make such a project of a workshop like that, once I arrived, there was a chance to learn how to make a makeup. My friends told me to learn of this job. I've endorsed myself to work in a workshop of making leather, to be learned how to make the recycling. A project of stitching. I hope to be in each place for the girls to work outside. Project for the households, women. I hope that this. I wish to have a door closed on me without any interruption. This is Egypt I dreamed of. Long live Egypt. A strong partnership with the civil society in Egypt that foster their ability to raise their future. Upon the participation of the civil society in developing the unplanned and insecure areas, Engineer Mohammed Ibrahim Musa is going to talk about these activities, and he's the CEO of the Al Haya institution. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, Your Excellency President Abdel Fattah Sisi, ladies and gentlemen. Sona Al Haya is old, 14 years, disseminated throughout the Republic. I was volunteered to work there in 2005. My colleagues volunteered under a council of trustees of different expertise. We work with the youth and for the youth. Our mission to explore the capabilities of the executive leaders through emerging the youth in the fields of development with the cooperation of relevant authorities in the countries and the desert of Egypt. If we take a role model of such a mission, last week, through our use with the Ministry of the Social Solidarity, distributed in Halai Barchalatin 5,000 of school bags, as well as food assistance in Sinai and Aulad Ali in the west. Volunteer is a secret keyword, and this is the role model. Our volunteers, more than 10,000 volunteers executing different activities under the umbrella of the Ministry of Social Solidarity. So would like to tell you that they are at the service of anything to serve the country. We've encouraged more than 1,000 to take the remedy and the treatment in confronting the addiction. We've executed 4,000 of micro enterprise, developed more than 1,000 computer lab with the participation of the biggest electronic enterprises in Egypt. If we talk about the Decent Life initiative, we worked in 10 villages in Sohag and Qina. We've elevated the efficacy of 1,300 houses, built in more than 3,000 ceiling and more than 500 more transmission and more than 100 and 200 compensation equipment and devices. We've purified more than 35 roads in the Helwan city. If we talk about the illiteracy, and we've made it with the cooperation to one of the biggest companies of communication in Egypt, we're capable to elevate the illiteracy of 160,000 of illiterate. More than 50,000 took the certificate. That included more than 1,300 classes of more than 2,000 village of 18 governorates, in addition to the border governorates in Halab and Chalatin. If we're talking about innovations and the campaign of People for Everybody, we've already reached the services to more than 30,000 families through text messages. Each beneficiary is getting all what they need without any restrictions of a specific good. The results, if the disabilities, frustration, and the dissemination of diseases, the literacy, for that cause, for such reasons, we made Sunnah al-Hayat to develop the human people in the insecure areas. Our target is the integration and their rules, and to provide a better future for living and develop their infrastructure. What you can see is an awareness corner of Al-Asmarat, which is the main thing if we move in a speedy manner to work better through 3 pivots to develop the teenagers and the youth and the family. The need for security, the living and the employment security, the need to be evaluated, self-esteem, and the innovation and troubleshooting. With respect to developing the young people, we have a program to develop the educational services in the kindergarten, to invest their abilities, a program for educational support to foster the belonging through educational campaigns and journeys for the children. We have an awareness campaign for confronting the addiction or training for the employment. If we talk about the development of the breadwinner, if you're talking about a program for the illiteracy for the uneducational people, to elevate and erase the illiteracy of more than 1 million people by the positive means. Your Excellency, long live Egypt by Egyptians who work. Make us to feel that we are needed, not them to have everyone in each moment rest assured and secured. And thank you, sir. Any directives, sir? A continued effort, aggressive strategies pursued effortlessly Ministry of Housing and Urban Communities. On such strategies, Dr. Engineer Asim Abdul Hamid Al-Gazzar, Ministry of Housing and Facilitation in Urban Communities, is going to present us. Please, you have the floor, sir. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most passionate, Your Excellency, President Abdel Fattah Sisi, the President of the Republic, ladies and gentlemen, many happy returns on the occasion of the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Allow me at the outset to talk about some previous figures. The areas of slums in Egypt, number of population before 2014 was about 14 million. Of course, in this different studies would reach 20 million according to the classification and the definition of the unplanned and slums areas. 1.7 used to live in insecure areas, and 357 areas, and 12 million used to live in an area of 152 million fidens. What if reached without any intervention or continued without any intervention after 2040 would have now at least about 3 million people, and the slums were inhabited by 15 million. And the features of devastation of the urban environment, as well as the trespassing of the agricultural lands you've tackled previously, sir, i.e., taken into consideration the population in the civil, that means 40 to 45% of Egypt's population to be lived in unplanned and insecure areas. The state reviewed and rejected this situation, decided to eliminate the unplanned and insecure area by laying out a strategy and a plan of building 1.8 million housing units. Allow me, sir, to explore and review our project in the same framework. The strategy were laid out by the state to eliminate slums, not just building the 1.8 million housing unit, but to have a strategy of non-emerged, not to have any other slums emerged anymore. In addition to the President initiative of the mortgage finance initiative, in addition to other efforts to provide that would have actually the provision of the housing unit better than anything else. For the insecure areas, currently no one lives in insecure areas. Some people live in secured areas who were actually been living in alternative place until they finish and live in other areas of a cost of 63 billion Egyptian pound of free housing for them to have 250,000 housing units were rehoused to end the phenomenon totally. That would lead us, Your Excellency, to talk about the very important point in the framework in the plank. You've already mentioned, sir, not to build housing or apartment building. We are talking about the right of the decent life. The national strategy launched in 2020 of the second pivot talked about the economic, cultural and social rights. in the framework of the development project we've talking about today, we are working on 5 main articles. The first one is the right of housing, and the 7th one, but also there is the right of health, right of work, right of education. These are the efforts of the project of rehousing of the insecure areas. If you've taken the main index, the right of housing is achieved through a set of indexes that are 7. The security, the cost allocations, the provision of services, the site, the location, and the convenient of with respect to the cultural aspect. We start about the security of the possession, which is the security of the house and the land, that tackled a set of allegations that the citizen to be secured in the house and the land. He could, or he or she would possess a land but be insecure, because he has insecure in the housing, or to be trespassed of the state-owned land. If the citizen lack this security, so would lead to the insecurity socially. If we talk about these areas, the insecure areas, we found that 80% of them, of inhabitants, lacking the position security with respect to the land, and 80% do not have such an article with respect to the housing. When the state works on developing this area, is contracting the relevant entities to provide the position security without any discrimination. On the overall framework in the field of securing the position as a human rights, the has launched the decree is 184 of 2017 to regulate the circumstances of such an article, of such a decree modified in 2022 with regard to the reconciliation of the breaches of the building. All these are human rights provided by the state through the development project or the law project to secure for these citizens, even though they are a breacher, a trespasser, but to secure the social security is the state of the goal that made in the front. The zones for the rehousing, that would give a different alternative for the citizens, whether they are gaining an alternative financially or taking an alternative unit in a different location if they are going to be moved. As the populations are moving in our biggest project in Ahalina and Al Asmarat, or returning to the same area in such as Al Sayyid Zainab Rauda, that the state is providing him a rent sum of money that we are talking about the 15% of in the program. The other index is the ability of bearing the cost of the housing. As we talked previously, before 2014, the citizen had a weakness of the insecure income, irregularity. The state wasn't able to provide an alternative. the lackage of program would assist of the troubleshooting. Since 2014, the state is providing a full facilitated housing, and the citizen is to bear the full cost by the set of incentives to facilitate the mortgage finance, and the unit is to the average of the total price started from 500 to 700,000 Egyptian pound. All what the citizen bears is only a small amount of number, which is like 300 Egyptian pound per month. The right of housing, including the third dimension, the fitness of housing. This is not a housing. This is, in fact, isn't in a house. We are talking about an alternative, but we are seeing it's just like in a resort, because an unhealthy, insecure regarding the environment and the construction. The affordable house should have the good and the suitable environment. What we provide, as you can see, this is what we provide. As talked by His Excellency, Mr. President, that we dream because we want to dream, but not to dream just to move forward, a step forward. This is the model provided by the state, an apartment of 3 rooms and a reception. To be clearly before you, we provide some units, 2 bedrooms and 1 reception for just a very special families of 4 members, through the social research for just a small number. And the provision services and the infrastructure, such zones and areas that they used to live with that lacks services, facilitation, infrastructure for the house and the area, the difficulty of mobilization within the area. As was said before by one of the girls who used to live in the insecure areas, by saying that she used to say that we were isolated from the whole world or the outside world. Such communities we are working on fulfill the needs of the social or the local society, as we've seen before, such hospitals, youth centers that have positive role for the social services to rehab and raising the awareness for the young people. The provision of electricity and natural gas, allocations of the public transportation. As I said before, this is one of the main goals, that these areas to represent a societal integration in the surrounding communities. The main index is the provision of the main needed services. These areas never had given any simple means of the rights or a simple feature of the right of life. Just we wish to imagine that the citizen to move out of such an area is the internal component, and how it would be like to choose locations of free housing near to the industrial zones, as what we've done in Magra Al Ayoun, when had the some workshops for just the manufacturing leather tools and materials were moved to Al Rubeika area, which has a social dimension. Fulfillment of the needs of the women is the work of the women, paid a great attention by the state, providing the workshops for the such crafts and such professions, and also the courts of allocated for the youth and the children. And we cannot forget to fulfill the needs of the disabled people. We are talking about from the constructional perspective, taking into consideration the facility and the easy mobilization for them within the institution. Most of these areas of fully dangerous, when they were emerged initially, they were actually merged on the marginalization of the construction within the construction blocks. Up till now, some areas in Manshiyat Nasser, for example, it is hard to enter and approach. We are also paying in consideration the connection of the locations. We redeveloped the areas in the same place, even new sites. We are choosing in the areas of urban integrations without any shape of marginalization. Even the marginalizations zones such as Nazlet, Semana and Sinila, Augusta, they were near to their linkage, a direct link of pyramids area. Once we've chosen the new areas, they were used to live here in the entrance of the pyramids zone in the framework of development made by the state and the engineering authority of the armed forces. It is planned of the main entrance on the Al Fayoum road. Therefore, once we've chosen of the rehousing zone, we considered the economic dimension. Then we've chosen this site that we are in because of the linkage of the working opportunities. And of course, many of these areas were prone on the dangers of the high electrical pressure, as directed by you, sir. At the end of the next year, it will be moved to rehoused in new areas without any chance of having any dangers. The cultural and social entity is the last article. So the culture of the crowdness would actually transmit a disease. Allow me, and excuse me, sir, to talk about a point. The Egyptian farmer, when is actually targeting the corn, once they are about to be completely grown, so the corn would be lifted at the end of a prune, getting two seeds being would get something like driedness that do not actually produce a fruit. This is the culture of crowdness. This is actually what is being done in the culture of the lack of feeding, the lack of air, the lack of a suitable environment. So the human is like the plant, would actually be raised up such as the rawiyah, not just like a cone. So it's lacking several types of such fruits to maintain the social bonds, to rehouse the people of a similar social characteristics as we did in Rodet al-Fishermen in al-Domeita, as we did in the Red Sea, as be compatible and convenient with the culture. If we moved on to the projects of integration, to be integrated today, we are integrating the living project in addition to Ahalina project being presented by the armed forces. What being executed is 210,000 housing units that serve 1.1 million citizens. Now we are inaugurating 13,000 housing units. We're talking about 12,400 housing units, as well as a country house to change the life of 65,000 citizens. The first project is October Rauda, is the alternative housing for Sin el Aguz, to move the inhabitants of Sin el Aguz and Nazl Samman to a new area of Hadai el October. It is planned to receive 2,500 families for 12,000 population. It is
أعظم أثر باقي على الأرض. 17 فدان، عدد السكان فيها 4000 نسمة، فيهم حوالي 829 أسرة. طبعا احنا زي ما
as directed by His Excellency Mr. President, we are building an great number because we are targeting to develop the whole area, and this is the shape, the form or the previous shape of Sin el Aguz, confronted directly to Hadabat al-Ahram, or the pyramids held, that has 114 apartment building and 60 of activity units to be used for commercial and crafting activities, of a cost 1.5 billion in Egyptian pound, of 2,500 housing units, 4 units of each floor, 4,440 to be executed as a second phase, one ground floor and 9 floors to complete it at the end of 2022. To rehouse the people of Tal al-Aqarib, 1,816 family of 4,000 population. This is the shape used to be in the heart of El Sayyida Zainab. This is the alternative housing, 816 of housing units, 16 apartment building, 198 of activity unit, of a cost of 140 billion Egyptian pound. We've built it more than the size of the people used to be in the area, and we've moved from the confronted area 213 families, and currently we are developing in Al Tayyiba. Allow me, sir, to say that the inhabitant of Al Tayyiba used to say to the people of Tal al-Aqarib that you are going to be moved, not able to return back. And when they return, Al Tayyiba area came to us by saying, this area is actually deteriorated. Aren't we going to in the same project now? The evacuation being done, and we are going to redeveloping the area totally. Ramlet Bulak's inhabitant is going to be removed partially to a new area in Al Salam district of 4,116 families of 20,000 population. These areas of Batn al-Baqara and Abu Qarn, we used to be last week, it was a dream for all the people concerned about the developing the slums and secure areas to eradicate these areas. And thanks to Almighty God, we developed 4,116 apartment building of a cost of 106 billion Egyptian pound of full services, a completed areas of full services, a project of Raudat al-Abur to move the inhabitant of Abu al-Qarn, Abu Hashish, of 4,171 families of a total project plus added to 901 of an activity unit. As you directed, sir, to increase the activities units to have a very completed communities that include people, facilitations, and the services. The cost of 1.4 billion Egyptian pound. I just like to see the diversity of the urban diversity provided. There's no one type and pattern, but they are different because of the place. And of course, the full services in kindergarten, health center, school, church and mosque. Each new areas has these facilitations. It is planned of developing 1,800 from Hadai al-Ubba, 1,400 from Masri al-Qadima. All these inhabitants used to live in a very different areas, are living all together. The fifth project in Ras al-Bar, this is the shape used to be before, where about like shanties used to live there. 12 apartment buildings were built directly in the same area of a very distinctive urban and constructional pattern of a cost of 150 million Egyptian pound. The sixth project made by the Ministry of Housing, and the picture, this is the project that we are going to inaugurate Ar-Ruwaysat in the north or the south of Sinai governorate. Used to live in a very permanent dangerous zones under the roof of a mountain, were moved to this area, and these buildings, so 31 apartment building of a cost 315 million Egyptian pound. The SIVS project in South Sinai, 62 of Bedouin house of a cost 53 million Egyptian pound, as to move the people or inhabitants of Ashish al-Gabal, 32 of housing unit and 513 Bedouin house of a cost of 136 million Egyptian pound. The Raudat al-Gharda, a project of the Red Sea to move the inhabitants of Al-Daras, inhabitants of 850 families of 13,000 population of a cost 350 million Egyptian pound. The building of 3 bedrooms and a reception. Another project in Red Sea to remove the inhabitants of Al-Kallahin of 76 families, 380 population, to provide 40 housing unit plus 36 Bedouin house of a cost 130 million Egyptian pound. The same Bedouin house of 150 square meter, Raudat Safaga's project in the Red Sea to remove the inhabitant of Zarzara inhabitants of 234 family of 1,300 population, 60 housing unit plus 170 Bedouin house, 3 rooms and a reception and an open area of 150 square meter. Allow me, Your Excellency, Mr. President, according to your directives recently, Ministry of Housing and the Urban Community Authority, representative of Egypt, was rewarded, the UN reward in providing the sustainable urban and the General Mr. Guterres actually mentioned what the efforts of the state about human rights, as you've already mentioned, Bruce. Allow us just to hear this. We are now here in Cairo, and Mr. Minister, in receiving the reward from Mrs. Maimouna, and the authority is rewarded on the name of Egypt on the oldest reward provided by the program of the United Nations, which is the honor reward of the main role in the provision of the social housing provision that is secure, affordable, facilitated in Egypt. Allow us, sir, to inaugurate the alternative housing in Sharm el-Sheikh, made by Engineer Hazem Abdurrabba, the General Director of Construction, the South of Sinai, and the supervisor of the project, to be inaugurated via a video conference. Any directives? Sir, thank you. Opening the alternative housing and routed Sayyida Zainab to be inaugurated. Dr. Mahran, the chief of Al Sayyida Zainab district, along with the supervisor of the project. Any directives there? Thank you. To inaugurate the alternative housing project in the Red Sea, or rather the Ras Al Bar city, to be inaugurated by the supervisor of the project as well as the chief of the district. Any directives there? Thank you. to inaugurate the alternative housing in Ma'an area in Al Salam, to be inaugurated Engineer Ala Sayed with the president or the chief of the body of Al Abur, as well along with the project supervisor. Any orders, thank you. To inaugurate the alternative housing of the project Ard al-Masna in Al Salam, to be inaugurated Engineer Said Ibrahim Amin, the assistant of the chief of Al Abur body, and along with the supervisors of the project. Any orders there? Thank you. To inaugurate the alternative housing project in the Hargada, to be inaugurated engineer of the chief of the, as well as the supervisor of the project. Any orders there? Thank you. Any orders? In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most passionate, allow me to thank you, Dr. Asim, for the presentation and the way that we are in need to remind us with, as well as our people, to the volume of the challenge and the problem. A few days ago, some used to say, why you're not happy? I answered, believe me, I did not see what have been done, but I look forward to what haven't been done yet. Therefore, I would like to thank you for what you've been presented. And so one of the things that I put around down here, that one of the things that when we tackled a great big campaign were launched from those people. So their target is the skepticism, the interest as usual, or those who do not understand. And these people, it's our issue, it's just to increase the awareness. But these people we're suspicious about this, they will still the same. But I see this is the whole Egyptian who look to us, seeing us and watching us, are concerned only with the middle class and the rich people, or with we are paying the attention to every class, not just today, throughout the past 6 to 7 years. No, we are working on a program. I would like to say something. I dream of 3 million housing units like this, i.e. multiplied by 15 million citizens. those 3 million cost, if you say the million would be cost of from 500 to 600 billion Egyptian pound without any other things to be calculated. If we talk about the building alongside the facilitations, we are not calculating the land. This is not because of the pictures you've seen that reminds us of our situation. When you deal, some would say, is the issue is housing only. Several said teach the people well. Of course, I would like to do so, but if they live in such a situation, so teach him what? That would create a personality that rejects and hates everything. I would like to tell you something, especially for the NGOs, officials in the Ministry of Social Solidarity, please, more programs, not just to integrate people, just to get them out of the situation they used to be. Without mentioning the place, I visited the place, I found them putting very thick curtains, everyone covering themselves, their balconies. From what? Just let the people to get some fresh air. And I asked them, Dr. Asim's drawn my attention to them words that everyone wished to be contained, each building, without any exaggeration. So you go into any place we made, you'll find the thick curtain of the balcony, you'll find it outside, even if they're not exposed. But it's just a culture. You're not getting any air and sun. We are made the houses of balcony to make them happy. Once again, I dream of making 3 to 5 million housing units. By the first thing I would like to mention, thank and praise to the Almighty God that enabled us to make this to our people, helped us to make this, to change the lives of the people. And I say to myself, or to everyone who talks in the religion, this would please and satisfy Almighty God or not. If they wish to have the people of more righteous, good, religious. What do you mean by the righteous? These people who used to live in this situation, they would grow up rejecting and hating everything. I would like to thank you for your presentation, but it is too early. Seriously. You know what? Why I said this, do you imagine when I proposed this 8 years because I'm having other target, I swear to the Almighty God, I have no other target such as regulating the issue of subsidies, is just only for saving rightly. I said this before, I close my door here and stay here and just to live in a very small amount of food and let my girls and daughters live peacefully. I thank Almighty God, yes, and we should all together to thank Almighty God that gave us and enabled us, and of course, God willing, we'll be doing more than that later on. Look, the Almighty God will never fix the works of the corrupt people. If we're not doing so, otherwise the Almighty God would not help us. But if you wish to make people happy, isn't just a meal and tell them goodbye. No, you are make them to live their life here. It's in a fully and totally change for their lives. Dr. Mustafa used to get angry with me when I said, you are by telling me what shall I do, and I said, I don't know what to do. You should launch a bigger program, and I said this to Ahab before. Bigger than that, and through, I don't know how, just to enable us to say that the all faces make it 1, 2, 3. No, we would like to remove them all together and remove it as a total, and would be a full change for the life of the people. In fact, and it is a must to make services and workshops to be as much as possible to provide work opportunities for those who are going to live there. The second point I would like to say to the whole Egyptian, what have been presented a situation where formed through 50 to 60 years, and our dream is to finish through 5 years is a great praise. But I would like to say something, and a great portion of what we've done is linked totally to the population growth. Mrs. Ministry of Social Solidarity talked about the disabled and the regulations of the food cards. The non-digitalization was the only default, and therefore wouldn't have any stability for an inaccurate situation that has a lot of corruption. I said this to Dr. Mustafa before. Would I say it now? I have a food card on my name to be dispensed by the whole, what I've said. And of course, they do not exist, and they do not wish to have it, but they do not know that they are used in different places. So digitalization that we are seeking, its goal is to let me see right, to classify the society in a perfect way, is just to give each their work, their right, without any waste. Through the past 50 to 60 years, some practices were formed, let the people to get benefited from these subsidies, and if we never have any convenience, when I stopped this 2 years ago, I said to stop it just to make sure that our data, the degree or its quality is to be very entrusted. This one point. The second point, I would like to say or to talk about money. I consider myself that Allah made me responsible for these people, because I'm a householder, spending, and He's responsible before the Almighty God in everything, not just to stay in a place and maintaining only. No, I swear to the Almighty God, He is responsible for the people. It's only to some days we live, and then we will meet Him, Almighty God, and I hope it will be a good one. Back the money, the point of money, what I have, I would like to remind you. I took this for many reasons. The first one, we are partners. It is only one house. I'm with you and from you. The second point, we want to see all together quickly, not just me and the government. Mrs. Naveen, please be seated. I say again, I mentioned some issues you never heard of it before, but they were there. How did we tackle the issue of the pensions? And I remind the people that everyone used to say our rights, our money were taken by the state. Yes, it was true. It's an emergency procedure was made. The state was committed before the beneficiary of compensation and the pension. I would like just to say, how is the world doing this process? You are working for a period of time, some money deducted from your salaries to be entered and put in funds. These funds were invested, and the return will be your pensions for every month to be divided. This was done in Egypt based on the minimum wage, and many of employers give a very small portion for those beneficiaries because of course they wish to gain more money, but unfortunately 20 to 30 years will be a beneficiary of the beneficiary. But I would like to say that this point or this issue was existed in Egypt based on studies on that time was good. Ultimately, the figure to be gained wasn't good. And the second point, the studies were done for do I making you stand for a long time? No, not sir. It was based for or on ages, but these ages were increased. This wasn't made in these studies to give you 20 to 30 years of employment for pension. More than that would be have nothing. What the state did, they found that they earned the entitled money for the for each year 150. When the issue emerged, we said to calculate or to let the state do it, to take it. So they allocated money, I say 150 billion Egyptian pound, to memorize it. Dr. Mustafa said to me, no, we are going to pay 180 billion Egyptian pound. We give this amount for mostly 9 million beneficiary, 180 billion Egyptian pound the state is going to spend, because the issue was lost and wasted. But if they found the problem was formed as it is, what we said to confront to, and this would be till 20 to 52, to 2052. But what is required now? What it is required now, when we do this study and to correct the situation, to pay attention to this issue, not to be repeated again, God willing, and with the generation to come. So firstly, 180 billion Egyptian pound for about 30 to 30 years, just to calculate it, and not to have a debate about this issue again. Back to our issue. This is another issue we've tackled, we've confronted a huge one, a very huge one that require 2 to 3 trillion Egyptian pound. Some would say leave it. Some would say leave the people live like that for 20 to 30 years ago. What is it to you? I don't know. I cannot just do this and leave it like that. To stay and stay, to break down the challenges, build and change, till we make the people that we swear to before the Almighty God to bear their responsibilities, to entrust them to be up to the entrust, God willing. Back to the issue, is it for the state only, the government only, or the state and the people? So it is the people and the state. I say this, and it is recorded before you, before the Almighty God, and before the history. And as long as we have such rates of population growth, believe me, we are not going to be able, or if we're not having these rates, is it going to be more than that? If, or would have done more than that, of course, certainly. You would to build schools, hospitals, provide them opportunities. Who is going to be able to do so? And as I said this before, when those responsible of raising the awareness in Egypt, the non-classification for the reasons of our problems, and these people would say that you were left aside and the other people just live freely. I mean us. They would have destroyed the country. The country would have been destroyed. And I said this to Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, that the size of the direct casualties we've already lost is about 400 billion Egyptian pound in 2011. If this state never paid attention and did the real roles, the country would have been devastated. It would create and emerge another huge problem. Once again, I say to you, the whole of Egyptians, the media people, the responsible, if we're not going to have a control for the population growth in Egypt, what about what we are doing now? We're not going to be calculated. Do not get me wrong. Believe me, because I have support from the Almighty God, not by our abilities, I swear to the Almighty God, I swear once again, I'm doing this because of the full support from the Almighty God, because we are not capable enough, securing us, giving us without any limits. So please help us to take the possible means to get use back to what you've said, what we are working in it, what I'm targeting it is another thing, because I cannot live and bear the to let the people live in such places. So once you've inaugurated the Al Firdaus access, when I go there and look aside to Manshit Nasser, it is the same thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. The other axis, Ashes Abbey, in Al-Amal city, some people there living in a very unsuitable places and houses we are going to destroy and rebuild. What I want to say that the first real step in paying attention to the human is to provide them a suitable house, as said by Dr. Assam. When I mentioned to regulate the situation or legalize the situation, so what I'm doing, legalize your default. You've trespassed in a land you do not own. I said, okay, let it be your land, to legalize your default, just to make you feel that you are a sound human in your behaviors and manners. I once again would like to thank you. You still have a lot to hear ahead of us, and thank you. Will you excuse us, Your Excellency, Mr. President, to start a tour of exploring and reviewing some projects we inaugurate today. Thank you.
المصري عمره ما يوم خضع شهم وأصيل حر وجدع يعمل علشان بلده البدع راهن عليه تكسب أكيد شوفوا إنجازاتنا في كام سنة شوفوا الخضر شوفوا البناء حب البلد دي في دمنا ونجاحها بالنسبة لنا المصري عمره ما يوم خضع شهم وأصيل حر وجدع يعمل علشان بلد البدع راهن عليه تكسب أكيد شوفوا إنجازاتنا في كام سنة.
مشاهدينا الكرام، ونحن اليوم في واحد من المشروعات الكبيرة والهامة الخاصة بالسكن البديل للمناطق غير التي كانت منتشرة وخاصة في العاصمة في محافظة القاهرة. عدد كبير من المناطق العشوائية والتي كانت لا تهدد حياة المواطنين فحسب، لكنها أيضا كانت تهدد المستوى الحضاري والتاريخي للعاصمة المصرية. إنجاز كبير نشهده اليوم، وتابعنا إنجازات سابقة للسكن البديل للمناطق العشوائية وغير الآمنة. معالي وزير الإسكان دكتور عاصم الجزار، صباح الخير، بنهنئ حضرتك
of this. Dr. Asim would like to welcome you here and congratulate you for such a great civilized features we are witnessing today. Good, lovely morning for you, and thank you for having me here. To just elaborate, such a project for this area that used to be classified insecure areas and therefore to be removed. What about the most important measurement and procedures? On the level of the state, we had about more than 300 area that threatened the lives of the people. We've already started in 2014 a plan, and we've already ended about 80% of it. And today, there is no one lives in an insecure area, but some people still live outside. At the end of 2021, will announce Egypt is free of insecure area and rehouse these people in different alternative housing places. So you've already started to steps to transform the people, but move them to a new project is the next step. Then this step, 80% were done. What if left? There will be rehousing in some other projects. And for instance, Mosquito project, the people were being moved in a new rent means of housing, and later on will be moved to another area. This project of today, and of course the inauguration of Mr. President to other projects in Sharm el-Sheikh, for example, in Rwasidah, means that the Egyptian state is going in several and all directions, not only in the capital, but we directing to open the new administrative city and the new city, which does not mean to make it the civilized front, make it in its best. Of course, most of the insecure were focused and centered in Cairo, but we can say now that we have 19 governorates are free totally from the insecure area. And we've already made the rehousing for the inhabitants used to live in these areas, and we've ended of 210,000 housing units being rehoused, and we are still undergoing on the rest, and then will end up the phenomenon forever. What we say that we're not working on the quantitative or the dimension, but we are actually mentioning and talking about the quality dimension. This is the alternative housing for the area of Sin al-Agud that used to be in Hadabat al-Ahram, used to live in insecure and unhealthy area environment, are moved now to this place. You've pointed out that along with this project, the phenomenon of slums will be end forever, and people were suffered for a long time, were marginalized. Not this project, but other projects made by the state of different segmentations and form will participate not just to end the slums, but providing a suitable and convenient housing for each citizen. In the meantime of elevating the insecure areas, we're working on developing and never or preventing of having the same phenomenon without resorting of building the illegal building. Since 2014, we are working on 1,800,000 of housing units to be built under the umbrella of a housing for each one and the social housing. That's for each segmentation of the society throughout the republic, and therefore once we have a provided unit, so the citizen would be resorted to the unplanned and illegal way of housing. Your Excellency, Mr. Minister Asim Al-Ghazar, the Ministry of Housing, we would like to thank you once again for this interview. Thank you very much for having me.
شاي عالرايق تفوقك لو متضايق ونكتة تضحكك من القلب وحمص الشام عالكورنيش وخد طبق فول ورغيف عيش وقعد وغمس هنا على جنب راضي نعيش فيها عالقد وهي دي مصر اللي بجد في مصر تروح في أي مكان في ناس مختلفة في الألوان لكن نفس الطباع بالظبط وفي التتعيب قاعد شيخ في تشقيق وشه تقرا تاريخ بيخبط جوه قلبك خبط بنصلي جمعة وقداس حد وهي دي مصر اللي بجد.
مشاهدينا الكرام، ونحن اليوم في افتتاح واحد من المشروعات.
We are here now, and today, once we open and inaugurate an alternative housing project, we are talking about moving on to different social life. A life is full of life, if I may say. You have with us Mrs. Al-Qaban, the Ministry of Social Solidarity. I'd like to welcome you here. I'd like to thank you, Mrs. Minister. And I would like to wish to congratulate you today that today would be a witness for a very civilized leap for the people, such a great move. I would like, can you elaborate? And I would like actually to join you, your happiness that we completed the path of the reform and construction such as the decent life. So reforming the construction is going everywhere on the level of economics, infrastructures, sanitation, facilities, and on the level of building the human and investing the human. And that's our job. And I think is developing the human resources and a part and parcel of building the nation. Therefore, as Ministry of Solidarity, the first thing is assisting and preparing such housing unit. So the issue is not just a building, but inside is prepared and finished. This is what makes the project provided by the state distinctive, which is the idea paid which is the idea of His Excellency, Mr. President, which is the human life. Here we see the full furnished housing unit, which is a precedent thing. I think we are the first country ever to do so. Of course, it's the idea of His Excellency, Mr. President, to provide a full furnished housing unit is for the citizen to be moved, it's just to take their clothes bags. So also there are other social programs with the families regarding the children to expand the building kindergarten and the services provided for the handicapped, as well as those people in segmentation of the addiction, for example, is just to maintain what is being gained of construction to be maintained. It is actually a great point, and you are talking about it mainly, which is the idea of the life of the people when they are moved. I see in tools, in slums, to follow up the situation of the people once they are moved in these places, how their lives would change, and how do you are very keen for their lives, in particular the life of their children. And as said by His Excellency, Mr. President, if anyone is going to be grown in such a situation, to would grow up hating and rejecting everything. Of course, people feels very happy at first looking at great landscape, living in a very vast and wide roads, and the privacy of the house being secured by security officers. Of course, they are at first shocked for a while because they were moved totally. I would like just to interrupt you here for a moment because I followed you previously in a Smartphone project that the lives of the people when they move, they may moved by in a very unpleasant manner. So how to change such manners. Of course, any change would require a time, but our role is to be fully ready once we receive the inhabitants. We were in Sinalago 3 to 4 weeks ago. People used to inquire what about the schools, and of course to be ready to be moved. And once they lived, we had actually 800 flat. 800 housing units, they just to review before choosing. So they were made some sort of a questionnaire for these people if they have any question or a hotline. So of course the first shock is natural, would take time. With respect to the manners, is a constant process of change. We cannot just say once they are moved they change tomorrow. And of course the earlier or the gray or the new born, the first early children, so once they enter this kindergarten, I noticed the happiness. There are two generations. They look at the opportunities of reform, and of course we are hoping to invest in the upcoming generation. Ma'am Minister Al-Qadban would like to thank you for this interview, and we wish to congratulate you again. Thank you.
لابسة طرحة جاية لينا من بعيد، وحاسبة كل خطوة عارفة هي رايحة فين، بتبتسم بفرحة للقريب وللبعيد، وبتشاور لبكرة ادخلوها آمنين. تحيا مصر تحيا، وعيونها تملي صاحية، وعيونها في كل ناحية وفي مليون اتجاه. تحيا مصر حرة، تحيا ألف مرة، تحيا مهما يجرى.
تحية لحضراتكم مشاهدينا الكرام مجددا من منطقة حدائق الأهرام، حيث يتفقد سيادة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي بعد قليل هذه المشروعات السكنية الجديدة في مجال الإسكان.
President عبد الفتاح السيسي will explore and review new alternative housing project for the insecure areas. And their inhabitants will be moved to a new alternative housing project. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is to inaugurate a great number of projects related to alternative housing projects, such as Rawdat al-Sida Zainab, Ahalina 2, Ruwaisat in Sharm el-Sheikh, that affirms that the state is very keen to look after the Egyptian citizen, not just in Cairo, but throughout the Republic, is to regain the feature of the historical feature that led to the idea of establishing the Developing Slums Fund. So the state paid a great attention to transform the people from the insecure area throughout the Republic to be moved in this area. For instance, Bashair al-Khair 3 that is located western Alexandria that contains 10,600 housing units, المحروسة 4,000 9,000 أهالينا 400 تل العقارب 800 housing units and 344 working shop. Al-Asmarat 3, which is considered the most important one, that inhabitants were moved there. In fact, this does not mean just to move into a place that is human and healthy, but to move to a new shape of life for them and for then generations to come. So to raise up children in these places would make a new picture for Egyptian people to be in the highest level of awareness and achievement and production. When we're talking about Al-Asmarat 3, that with a cost of 3 billion in Egyptian pound on a location of 260 fedans of space, great number of housing units are provided fully furnished, fully furnished, to be rented in a very simple sum of money. But what makes this distinctive is to move these inhabitants without any burden, any suffering, and forgetting the insecure life for them. The citizen to be moved here to a new housing unit, to an apartment fully furnished, has all their needs, do not require to think or to make themselves worry of gaining appliances or anything, as we followed in any other tools before previously being reviewed and honored and visited by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. We've looked into the level of the furniture. Such things would raise the level of the lives of the Egyptian citizens and provide them a decent life. In addition to raise the classification of the Egyptian state is expected to the paying attention to the Egyptian citizen. If the state pays a lot of attention to the Egyptian state, which means that pays attention to the all features and sides of the infrastructure regarding water, electricity and gas, etc. Dear viewers, we follow up the review tour of Mr. President to a new project of alternative housing project that is secure and
اخباركم ايه؟
الحمد لله.
مبسوطين؟
نورتنا يا باشا.
الله يكرمك. صحيح مبسوطين؟
الحمد لله تمام.
ولادك؟
موجود حضرتك.
كتر خير. ولادك؟ اسمك ايه يا جميل؟
اسمي ملك.
ها؟
ملك.
ملك. اسم جميل.
رحمة.
رحمة جميل. ملك ورحمة. طيب ده عشان كمان؟
شاكرين يا ولد.
لا
شاكرين ست يا باشا.
مثلا
ربنا يبارك لك يا رب.
في حاجة عايزين تقولوها لي هنا في الحياة في الدنيا قولوا لي.
المدرسة بس أنا عايزة أسأل عن المدرسة.
خلاص خلصت
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 المدرسة.
بس عندي مشكلة بقى في المدرسة الخاصة بس مش عايزين يدوني دوسية. أنا لما أخلص
بصي عشان ينقلوا حاضر
بس
حاضر
مفيش إلا الطلب ده.
حاضر
شكرا يا سيدي.
شاكرين جدا.
ربنا يبارك في حضرتك.
كله تمام يا فندم.
سلام.
علق أي أمور في حياتك، خلي لبلدك أكبر حيز، راجع بقى رجوك حساباتك، شغلك حيخليك تتميز، نام للساعة 2 ما تنامش، ما انت سنين انت ما بتقومش، احنا بنعمل كده لولادنا، مين قاعد معظمنا حيمشي، قول انا واهب تعب البلدي.
الأمانة تقتضي مني اللي أنا فاهمه وشايفه لازم أتصدى ليه وأحله.
ساكنة في عزبة أبو قرن وكانت كلها حشرات وكانت بيوت وحشة وكان جو برد علينا والنطرة بتنطر علينا.
اللي انتوا شايفينه ده هو عبارة عن دولة ما قدرتش تلبي مطالب النمو اللي موجود فيها.
عزبة وحشة أوي وحاجات حشرات وكانت كانش حلو الصراحة.
الولاد اللي تتربى في الحتت دي لا مؤاخذة يهدوا بلادهم. ليه؟ لأن هم ما خدوش منها حاجة.
كنت قاعدة في عش في بيت أبويا. بيت أبويا ده كان أوض عشش. صراحة ربنا الدنيا كانت وحشة خالص. بالليل لو النور قطع تخاف لحسن العارب والتعبين يسرحوا.
المفروض ما يبقاش حالنا كده خالص. طب انتوا حلتوها ازاي؟ ده فضل كبير قوي قوي من ربنا على مصر.
اللي شايفه حلم أو خيال، أوصف الجمال ده أقول في إيه؟ اللي جه وشاف ده كله قال بصوا شوفوا مصر عاملة إيه.
البيت ده أنا بغيره ب400,000 جنيه و450,000 جنيه من غير تمن الأرض ومن غير المرافق. احتراما وتقديرا لأهلنا اللي هنا احنا لازم نفرش الشقة كمان.
كل حاجة جابها لنا، كل حاجة فرشها لنا، كل حاجة ما كانتش عندنا لا الحمد لله هنا الرئيس موفرها.
ده اللي شايفه خيال واخد قلبي وعيني، الجمال ده يا عيني جنة ولا عالبال.
شكرا للرئيس السيسي.
لا هنا 100 هنا يسلم الرئيس.
احنا بنعمل كده عشان نغير بلدنا مش عشان الناس تحبنا. احنا بنعمل اللي يرضي ربنا سبحانه وتعالى ونتصدى القضايا كل الناس ما تتصدلهاش.
صدق اللي هتشوفه بعينيك، في البلد دي لسه فيه وفيه دنيا تانية حلوة بتناديك، بصوا شوفوا مصر عاملة ايه.
لازم ارتب ورق البلد دي حتى تكون دولة ذات شأن. بختار الطريق نهون الصعب قوي، ربنا يحاسبني. يقول لي انت كنت فاهم وساكت ليه؟ هيقول لي الكرسي ده انا اللي جبتك فيه وانا اللي همشيك منه.
والله ولا 100 سنه ولا 5 قرون هتعمل الحاجات اللي احنا بنشوفها في البلد دي.
عايزين نقول لحضرتك بنوعدك ان احنا هنستحمل وهنقف عشان تحقق احلامك وانجازاتك اللي عايز تعملها في مصر عشان مصر تبقى قد الدنيا.
مالك الملك يؤتي الملك من يشاء وينزع الملك ممن يشاء. محدش بيجيب حد ومحدش بيمشي حد.
اللي شايفه حلم أو خيال، أوصف الجمال ده أقول في إيه؟ اللي جه وشاف ده كله قال بصوا شوفوا مصر عاملة إيه.
بقى ابن مصر اللي في 3/7 يقف ويقدم نفسه جيش وأولاده ويمكن أحفاده. تعملوا في كده